Every broken culture starts with broken men.
I'm with the man pack, but I'm not a man.
Weak men don't just ruin their own lives, though. They ruin nations. And it's what's happening in America now. That's why
We need to talk.
these weak men, here's what they do. They abandon their families. They tolerate lies. They bow to cultural pressure instead of standing up for biblical truth. And here's what happens. When men go soft and silent, tyrants move in.
And then there was a vacuum.
And they get loud and abusive.
Let's get this party started!
When men sit down, confusion stands up. When men step back, chaos pours in. So today I'm going to show you, from the Garden of Eden to the mess on your newsfeed, why weak men create chaotic cultures and how we can fix it. Here's the bottom line. Strong cultures are built by men who fear God more than they fear conflict or getting canceled. We'll take this in several sections. First, it started with Adam. So let's rewind to the very first man. Genesis 3 is not just a kid's story. It's a blueprint for what happens when men abdicate their leadership role. God told Adam, don't eat from that tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You notice how God told Adam this, but Satan thought he'd go around Adam to Eve. But did you know Adam was standing right next to Eve when the serpent lied? So what did Adam do? He roared, right? He stood between his wife and the lie, right? He crushed the serpent's head like a real man of God. No, he stood there, passive, silent, absent. And ever since, every generation has repeated the same sin, which is silence when you should speak, passivity when you should protect, compromise when you should stand.
You'd think we'd learn by now.
Connects the modern man crisis. Let's fast forward to 2025. Where do you see weak men creating chaos today? That's a tough one. No, it's not. Everywhere. Let's take a few of the areas. Fatherlessness. Over 18 million kids in America live without a biological dad at home. No father equals higher dropout rates, higher crime rates, higher poverty. Weak men walk away. Strong men stay. We also see this in the increase in porn, which causes passivity and the wrong outlook towards women. Men are glued to screens today instead of growing in strength. They're hooked on pleasure. They're numbing out. They're playing video games. They're never growing up. It's like they live as the lost boys in Peter Pan. They don't step up to manhood and maturity. Porn trains men to take without giving, and it ruins their courage. And it produces cowardly leaders. That's an oxymoron. Look at the spineless politicians. They sell out truth to get reelected. Look at pastors who won't preach sin, won't call men to lead, won't rock the boat. Soft shepherds produce stray sheep. I've seen this countless times. In fact, I've been good friends with some of the pastors at the most well-known churches who have subsequently ghosted me because I preach the whole counsel of God, and that tends to empty seats. But I don't mind that, because a seat emptied of a passive man leaves room for a strong one. Third, the enemy wants men neutralized. Here's the spiritual reality. The enemy knows that when men stand strong, cultures stand strong. That's why hell targets manhood so viciously. It calls masculinity toxic. I'm sure you've heard that. It shames the whole idea of strength. It feminizes boys. In fact, it tells boys they can be girls. It celebrates confusion. Isaiah 3:12 says, my people, infants are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Listen, it's not an insult to women. It's an indictment of absent men. When men abdicate, society flips upside down. Everything goes 180. That's why the enemy's mission is pretty simple. Neutralize men, and the culture collapses.
We're ruined.
So you can't miss it. There's been a rise of weak men and a rise of strong tyrants. Look at history. Weak men in Germany let Hitler rise. Weak men in Russia let Stalin slaughter millions upon millions. Weak men in the modern West let woke tyrants shut down churches, lie about a virus, mutilate kids, and rewrite marriage. The pattern never changes. When men trade courage for comfort, tyrants move in to fill the vacuum. Because tyranny hates a vacuum, it feeds on it. The first church that I planted in North Carolina, when the law was being changed to include marriage as gay marriage, our church, and the second biggest church in North Carolina, Forest Hill, led by my friend and Pastor David Chadwick at the time, we stood strong. But we asked other churches to join us, and they flat out denied because they thought it would create too much tension or it would cause people to leave their church, including the biggest church in North Carolina, which you've likely heard of, which, had they stood strong, would have had plenty of influence to hold the attacks against marriage at bay. But I digress. You could probably figure out who that is. Section 5, how strong men can push back. There's good news. Chaos is absolutely not inevitable. But it's going to take men who fear God more than they fear conflict or being canceled. Proverbs 28:1 says, the wicked flee when no one's pursuing.
Stop running!
I don't know why, but that is funny, and I don't care what you think. But here's the other part of that verse. The righteous are bold as a lion. Listen, a bold man fights for his family's spiritual health. A bold man says, not in my house. A bold man says, not in my church. A bold man says, not in my culture. This is not about chest thumping or macho nonsense. It's about men who lead with humility, sacrifice, and truth, like Jesus did. Men, your wife needs your strength. Your kids crave your courage and leadership. And your church needs you to roar, not play golf. Nothing against golf, but something against golf on Sunday mornings. Listen, weak men create chaos. Strong men build cultures and stand when the world shakes. It's really that simple. So what do you want us to do, Pastor Rob? Well, first of all, listen to me. You don't get to check out. You don't get to stay silent. You don't get to pass the buck to your wife or your pastor or your government. You were made to stand, men, for truth, for family, for Christ. So begin by sharing this video with someone who needs to hear it. Then get in the conversation. Drop a comment. Where do you see weak men creating chaos today? And get ready, because next up, we tackle the question, can the West survive without biblical masculinity? Subscribe. Let's wake up the lions together. This has been Pastor Rob. I'll see you in the next video.